Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gone Legends, the place where we honor the lives and legacies of Hollywood stars and beloved icons. These are the men and women who may no longer be with us, but whose stories, performances, and contributions continue to inspire millions across the world. Before we begin, we'd love your support. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Gone Legends. And in the comments, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far the memory of these legends reaches across the globe. Now, let's begin this heartfelt journey of remembrance.
Stephen Sondheim, the legendary composer and lyricist, was born on March 22, 1930, in New York City. From an early age, he showed remarkable talent for music and storytelling. Mentored by the great Oscar Hammerstein II, Sondheim learned not just how to write songs, but how to tell stories through them, a lesson that would define his career. Over the decades, Sondheim transformed the face of musical theatre. His works were not simply entertainment, they were bold, challenging, and deeply human explorations of love, loss, morality, and ambition. He revolutionized Broadway by bringing psychological depth and lyrical complexity to the stage in ways no one had before. Among his masterpieces was Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, a dark and daring story that combined horror with operatic brilliance. In Into the Woods, he wove together familiar fairy tales into a profound reflection on choices, consequences, and human responsibility. And with West Side Story, where he provided the unforgettable lyrics, Sondheim helped craft one of the greatest musicals of all time, a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet that remains timeless. Sondheim's music demanded more of its audience. His lyrics were intricate, witty, and layered with meaning. Songs like Send in the Clowns and Being Alive did not just entertain, they forced listeners to think, to feel, and to reflect on the complexities of life. Over his career, Sondheim won 8 Tony Awards, an Academy Award, multiple Grammys, a Pulitzer Prize, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. His influence reached far beyond Broadway, shaping generations of composers, lyricists, and performers who saw in his work a new vision for what musical theatre could be. On November 26, 2021, Stephen Sondheim passed away at the age of 91. His death marked the end of an era, but his music continues to live on, performed in theatres, schools, and stages across the world. His legacy is monumental. Stephen Sondheim didn't just write musicals, he redefined them. He gave audiences stories that were intelligent, emotional, and timeless, proving that theatre can challenge as much as it can entertain. Stephen Sondheim will forever be remembered as the man who gave Broadway its modern soul. His genius continues to echo through every song, every stage, and every heart touched by his music. Ray Liotta, one of Hollywood's most unforgettable actors, was born on December 18, 1954, in Newark, New Jersey. Adopted as a child, he grew up with a deep sense of determination that later fueled his powerful screen presence. From the moment he stepped into the spotlight, it was clear that Liotta possessed a rare intensity, one that would define his career. He first gained widespread recognition in 1989 with his role in Field of Dreams, where he played Shoeless Joe Jackson. His performance brought both mystery and heart to the baseball classic, making audiences take notice. But it was in 1990, with Martin Scorsese's masterpiece Goodfellas, that Ray Liotta cemented his place in cinema history. As Henry Hill, he carried the film with a perfect balance of charm and menace, capturing the seductive pull and brutal consequences of life in the mob. The performance remains one of the most iconic in American film. Liotta's career stretched far beyond that one role. He appeared in a wide range of films and television projects, from action-packed thrillers to heartfelt dramas. His credits include Cop Land, Blow, Narc, Hannibal, and animated voice work in Grand Theft Auto, Vice City. Each role showcased his ability to command attention, whether as a villain, a conflicted anti-hero, or a man searching for redemption. His gravelly voice, piercing stare, and undeniable charisma made him instantly recognizable. Off-screen, Ray Liotta was known as a private man, deeply committed to his craft. Colleagues described him as generous, focused, and passionate about storytelling. He never shied away from challenging or complex characters, instead embracing roles that pushed boundaries and demanded honesty. On May 26, 2022, Ray Liotta passed away peacefully in his sleep while filming a movie in the Dominican Republic. He was 67 years old. His sudden death shocked fans around the world, who mourned not only a gifted actor but a figure whose performances had left a permanent mark on cinema. Ray Liotta's legacy is one of grit, power, and authenticity. He showed that a character could be terrifying yet human, dangerous yet magnetic. He gave life to roles that audiences will never forget, and in doing so, he became a legend of modern film. Though gone, Ray Liotta lives on in every frame of Goodfellas, every line delivered with intensity, and every moment when his artistry made us believe. He remains, forever, one of Hollywood's greats. Norm Macdonald, the Canadian-born comedian whose dry wit and offbeat delivery made him one of the most original voices in comedy, was born on October 17, 1959, in Quebec City, Canada. Known for his sharp timing, fearless approach to humor, and refusal to follow trends, Macdonald became a comedian who stood apart from the crowd, a performer who never compromised his style for easy laughs. He rose to fame in the 1990s as a cast member on Saturday Night Live, where he made his mark as the anchor of Weekend Update. With his deadpan delivery and biting one-liners, Norm transformed the segment into a showcase for his signature style. He wasn't afraid to push boundaries, often tackling controversial topics with a fearless honesty that set him apart. While his approach sometimes clashed with network executives, audiences embraced his authenticity, and his work became a highlight of the show. Outside of SNL, Macdonald built a career that stretched across stand-up comedy, television, and film. He starred in the cult comedy Dirty Work, 1998, voiced characters in animated films like Dr. Dolittle, and appeared in shows from The Drew Carey Show to Family Guy. His stand-up specials, including Me Doing Stand-Up and Hitler's Dog, Gossip and Trickery, showcased his unique ability to turn ordinary observations into brilliant, unexpected punchlines. What truly defined Norm Macdonald, however, was his commitment to comedy as an art form. He didn't chase trends, fame, or approval, he chased the joke. His humor was fearless, often meandering in ways that surprised audiences, then landing with devastating impact. Many comedians have called him a comics comic, someone who inspired laughter not only from fans, but also from fellow performers who admired his brilliance. On September 14, 2021, Norm Macdonald died at the age of 61 after a private, 9-year battle with cancer. He kept his illness hidden, choosing to live and work as though nothing had changed, performing stand-up and creating comedy until the very end. His passing shocked the comedy world, which mourned not only the loss of a great performer, but the silence of a voice unlike any other. Norm's legacy is immense. He influenced an entire generation of comedians who admired his courage, his originality, and his refusal to play by anyone else's rules. His humor, at once dry, daring, and deeply human, remains timeless. Norm Macdonald will forever be remembered as a comedian who never settled for the easy laugh, but always reached for the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, awkward, or unexpected it might be. And that is why his comedy will continue to resonate for years to come. Matthew Perry, beloved around the world for his role as Chandler Bing on the hit sitcom Friends, passed away on October 28, 2023, at the age of 54. His loss was deeply felt, not just by fans of the show, but by millions who grew up with his humor, his warmth, and his unmistakable presence on screen. Born on August 19, 1969, in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and raised in Canada, Perry was drawn to acting at a young age. In 1994, he landed the role that would change his life and make television history, Chandler Bing, the sarcastic yet lovable character whose one-liners became legendary. Over 10 seasons and 236 episodes, Friends became a cultural phenomenon, and Perry's sharp wit and impeccable timing turned Chandler into one of the most iconic sitcom characters of all time. But Matthew Perry's career stretched far beyond Friends. He appeared in films like The Whole Nine Yards, Fools Rush In, and 17 Again, showing his versatility as both a comedic and dramatic actor. He also returned to television in acclaimed roles in The West Wing and Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, proving that his talent went far beyond the sitcom stage. Yet, behind the laughter, Perry faced personal struggles. He spoke openly about his long battle with addiction, using his own painful experiences to help others find hope. In 2013, he founded the Perry House, a sober living facility in Malibu, dedicated to supporting people in recovery. His honesty and advocacy made him not just a star, but a voice of compassion for those in need. When his memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, was released in 2022, Perry shared his journey with raw honesty. Readers saw not just a famous actor, but a man who had faced darkness, fought through it, and worked tirelessly to give back. Matthew Perry's legacy is both comedic and deeply human. On screen, he gave us endless laughter. Off-screen, he offered truth, vulnerability, and hope. His life reminds us that even in struggle, there can be courage, and even in pain, there can be purpose. Though he is gone, Matthew Perry will always be remembered as more than Chandler Bing. He will be remembered as a man who made the world laugh, and who used his own story to help others heal. Legendary broadcaster Larry King passed away on January 23, 2021, at the age of 87. Known for his signature suspenders, smooth delivery, and warm, conversational style, King became one of the most recognizable figures in American television history. Born Lawrence Harvey Zeiger on November 19, 1933, in Brooklyn, New York, Larry King's path to stardom was far from easy. He grew up in a working-class immigrant family and lost his father at a young age, an event that deeply shaped his life. Despite financial struggles, King nurtured a dream of working in broadcasting. He began his career in radio in Miami during the late 1950s, where he adopted the professional name Larry King, after a station manager suggested something simpler for audiences to remember. His big breakthrough came in 1978 when he launched The Larry King Show, a national late-night radio program that allowed listeners to call in live and speak with guests. The show became a phenomenon, known for King's ability to ask straightforward, relatable questions that put both his guests and his audience at ease. In 1985, CNN offered him a new platform, and Larry King Live was born. For the next 25 years, King became a nightly fixture in American homes. He interviewed presidents, world leaders, celebrities, and everyday people, conducting more than 50,000 interviews over the course of his career. From Nelson Mandela to Frank Sinatra, from Barack Obama to Oprah Winfrey, King spoke with the most influential figures of the 20th and early 21st centuries. What set Larry King apart was not a confrontational style, but his ability to listen. He avoided long, complex questions and instead gave his guests space to share their stories. His belief was simple: I never learned anything while I was talking. That philosophy made him relatable to audiences and beloved by guests, who often revealed more in his chair than anywhere else. Even after leaving CNN in 2010, King never truly retired. He continued to host shows on digital platforms, proving that his voice and style were timeless. His dedication to broadcasting lasted more than 6 decades, a career unmatched in both length and influence. When Larry King passed away in Los Angeles on January 23, 2021, the world lost not only a broadcaster, but a cultural icon. His suspenders, his glasses, his voice, they were instantly recognizable, symbols of an era when television talk shows shaped how we understood the world. Larry King's legacy lives on in the countless interviews he conducted and in the generations of journalists and broadcasters who followed his path. He will forever be remembered as one of broadcasting's true greats, a man who believed every story mattered, and who gave millions of people a seat at the table of history. Chadwick Aaron Boseman was born on November 29, 1976, in Anderson, South Carolina. From the very beginning, his life was shaped by creativity, determination, and a deep sense of purpose. He studied directing and acting at Howard University, where he was mentored by greats like Felicia Rashad. When Boseman faced financial struggles, it was Denzel Washington who stepped in to help sponsor his studies, a gesture that Chadwick later said changed his life and gave him the chance to pursue his dreams. Boseman's career quickly became defined by portraying powerful figures in Black history. In 42, he brought to life Jackie Robinson, the first African American to play Major League Baseball, capturing Robinson's courage in the face of unrelenting racism. In Get On Up, he embodied James Brown, channeling the godfather of soul's explosive energy and spirit. And in Marshall, he portrayed Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice, once again proving his ability to carry the weight of history with grace and authenticity. But it was in 2018, as King T'Challa in Marvel's Black Panther, that Boseman reached global stardom. The film wasn't just a blockbuster, it was a cultural milestone. For millions of black children and audiences worldwide, Black Panther was more than entertainment, it was representation, pride, and empowerment. Boseman's performance turned T'Challa into a global symbol of strength and dignity, proving that a superhero could inspire far beyond the screen. All the while, Chadwick was fighting a battle the world did not know about. In 2016, he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. Over the next 4 years, he endured surgeries and chemotherapy, yet he never slowed down. During this time, he filmed Black Panther, Marshall, 21 Bridges, DA 5 Bloods, and his final role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Few knew of his illness, and his quiet strength during those years has become one of the most remarkable acts of resilience in Hollywood history. On August 28, 2020, Chadwick Boseman passed away at just 43 years old. The news stunned the world, and tributes poured in from fans, colleagues, and leaders across the globe. He was mourned not only as a brilliant actor, but as a man who lived with dignity, humility, and purpose. Chadwick Boseman's legacy is immense. He redefined what it means to be a hero, both on and off the screen. His performances celebrated black icons, his silence in suffering showed extraordinary courage, and his life continues to inspire millions to face challenges with strength. He will forever be remembered not just as King T'Challa, but as a true king, a man whose work uplifted, challenged, and united people around the world. Angela Lansbury, one of the most beloved and versatile actresses of the 20th and 21st centuries, passed away on October 11, 2022, at the age of 96. Her remarkable career spanned more than 7 decades, leaving an indelible mark on film, stage, and television. Born in London in 1925, Lansbury moved to the United States during World War II and quickly found her way to Hollywood. At just 19 years old, she earned her first Academy Award nomination for her role in Gaslight, 1944. Only a year later, she earned another nomination for the picture of Dorian Gray, 1945. These early performances showcased a talent far beyond her years and cemented her reputation as a rising star. Throughout the following decades, Lansbury built a career defined by versatility. In film, she gave audiences unforgettable performances in classics like The Manchurian Candidate, 1962, where her chilling role as Mrs. Iceland earned her yet another Oscar nomination. And in animation, she became a treasured figure for a new generation of fans as the gentle and warm voice of Mrs. Potts in Disney's Beauty and the Beast, 1991, performing the timeless ballad tale as old as time. Her influence was just as profound on stage. Lansbury dazzled Broadway with performances in Mame, Gypsy, and Sweeney Todd, winning 5 Tony Awards over the course of her career. Her ability to command both drama and musical theatre made her a rare talent whose presence lit up every stage she walked onto. But perhaps her most iconic role came on television. From 1984 to 1996, Lansbury starred as the sharp and compassionate mystery writer Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote. Over 12 seasons and nearly 300 episodes, she became a household name, beloved by millions of viewers around the world. Jessica Fletcher was more than a character, she was a symbol of intelligence, kindness, and determination. The role earned Lansbury worldwide recognition and cemented her as one of TV's most enduring figures. Beyond her professional success, Angela Lansbury was admired for her humility, grace, and generosity. She inspired countless actors with her work ethic and kindness, and she remained a dedicated performer well into her later years. Angela Lansbury's passing marked the end of an era. Yet her legacy remains eternal, in the films that continue to captivate, in the musicals that still inspire, and in the television role that made her a legend in homes across the globe. She will always be remembered as one of the greatest actresses of all time, a woman whose artistry and warmth touched every corner of entertainment. His name is John Joseph Nicholson, known across the world as simply Jack Nicholson, a name that vibrates with power, rebellion, and cinematic history. Born in 1937, he is one of the greatest actors ever to step in front of a camera, a man who redefined what it meant to be a Hollywood star. For over 5 decades, Jack Nicholson stood at the center of American cinema. His face, his voice, and his performances became unforgettable. He was the rebel, the seducer, the madman, and the truth-teller. He was the character who made you laugh, unsettled you, frightened you, and sometimes even reflected your own darkest truths back at you. But Jack's story begins far away from the glamour of the Hollywood hills. It begins in Neptune City, New Jersey, a working-class town where a boy who seemed ordinary would one day transform into the embodiment of cinematic genius. His childhood was marked not by comfort, but by secrets that would shape him forever. And yet, from these beginnings, Jack Nicholson would rise to become a 3-time Academy Award winner, a man nominated for Oscars a record 12 times, and one of the most respected and decorated actors in history. This is not just the story of a movie star. It is the story of a survivor, a truth-teller, and a cultural titan. This is the story of Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson was born on April 22, 1937, in Neptune City, New Jersey. From the very beginning, his life was surrounded not by clarity, but by secrets. He grew up in a modest working-class home, raised not by who he thought were his parents, but by his grandmother, Ethel May Nicholson, and her husband. Jack believed that Ethel was his mother and that his real mother, June Nicholson, was his sister. June was just 17 when Jack was born, and to protect her from the shame of being an unwed mother in 1937, the family made a decision to hide the truth. For most of his childhood and young adulthood, Jack believed this version of reality. He thought his grandmother was his mother was his sister, and his real father, well, that was a mystery that would never truly be solved. It wasn't until 1974, when Jack was already an established Hollywood actor, that a reporter from Time magazine revealed the truth to him during an investigation into his past. Imagine the shock. At nearly 40 years old, Jack discovered that the woman he had always called his sister was, in fact, his mother. And the woman he believed to be his mother was actually his grandmother. This revelation shook him, but Jack, with the resilience that would define his life, accepted it with remarkable calm. He later said, "It was a pretty dramatic event, but it wasn't what I'd call traumatizing. I was pretty well psychologically formed." Still, this secret, buried for so long, shaped Jack's understanding of identity, family, and trust. It added a layer of complexity to the man who would later so convincingly play characters wrestling with madness, betrayal, and truth. House a childhood of modesty and misbehavior. Despite the secret at the heart of his family, Jack's childhood in New Jersey was not without joy. He grew up in a modest neighborhood, surrounded by working-class families. He attended Manasquan High School, where he was known as the class clown. His charm and mischievousness were evident even then. Teachers often saw him as bright but unfocused, more interested in entertaining classmates than in academics. Yet, that natural charisma, that ability to grab attention with a look, a smirk, or a clever remark, was already there. Jack wasn't raised with wealth or Hollywood privilege. He came from ordinary beginnings, and that ordinariness would stay with him. Unlike many stars who drift away from their roots, Nicholson always carried with him the sense of being grounded, of being the outsider who made it to the top. Even as a boy, Jack showed signs of being a performer. He loved to imitate voices, crack jokes, and play the fool. But no one around him could have predicted that this mischievous kid from New Jersey would one day dominate the screen as one of the greatest actors in history. His early life was less about the arts and more about survival, fun, and finding a way to stand out. Yet, in those early classrooms and neighborhood streets, the seeds of performance were being planted. One of the great unanswered questions in Jack Nicholson's life was the identity of his father. To this day, it remains uncertain. There are conflicting reports. Some suggest his biological father was a man named Donald Fasillo, others that it may have been Eddie King, a showman. But Jack himself never pursued the answer aggressively. Perhaps, after the shock of learning the truth about his mother and grandmother, he understood that some mysteries were best left unsolved. Or perhaps he had already learned to live with absence, the absence of a father, the absence of clear truth. This ambiguity, this sense of mystery about his origins, became a part of his identity. And later, when he played complex characters on screen, men with secrets, men with wounds, men wrestling with identity, he drew from a deep well of personal experience. Growing up under these circumstances was not easy. But Jack Nicholson developed something powerful in his youth: resilience. He learned to take shocks and keep moving forward. He learned to use charm, humor, and performance as shields and as weapons. These qualities would serve him throughout his life. They would make him magnetic on screen, and they would help him navigate the turbulent waters of Hollywood. By the time Jack graduated high school, he was a young man full of charisma, mischief, and potential, but he was still far from the Hollywood icon he would become. The next step of his journey would take him from the East Coast to California, where destiny was waiting. By the late 1950s, Jack Nicholson was no longer just a mischievous kid from New Jersey. He was a young man with charisma, determination, and an instinct for performance. And like so many dreamers before him, he set his eyes on Hollywood. After finishing high school, Jack moved west to California, where his mother, or, as he had believed at the time, his sister, June Nicholson, had been living. He took on odd jobs to survive, but he always kept himself close to the dream factory that was Hollywood. One of Jack's first jobs was at the MGM cartoon studio, where he worked as an office assistant. Imagine Nicholson as a teenager, running errands, delivering messages, filing paperwork, hardly glamorous, but it kept him inside the gates of a studio. Even then, his charm made him memorable. He would watch animators at work and dream of something bigger. He wasn't just content being a cog in the Hollywood machine, he wanted to be in front of the camera. Performing arts acting classes and discovery. Determined to act, Nicholson began taking classes, studying under some of the most respected coaches of the time. He worked on his craft with seriousness, developing a style that was raw, instinctive, and deeply emotional. It wasn't long before he caught the attention of industry insiders. His rugged good looks and unpredictable energy made him stand out. He wasn't polished like the matinee idols of the 1950s. He was rougher, more dangerous, a quality that would later make him a perfect fit for the new Hollywood movement of the 1970s. Movie camera first roles, the struggle of the unknown actor. Jack's earliest film roles were far from glamorous. In 1958, he made his film debut in The Cry Baby Killer, a low-budget exploitation film where he played a teenager who thinks he has committed murder. The film barely made an impact, but for Jack, it was a start. The next decade was filled with small roles in B-movies, westerns, and low-budget horror films. He appeared in movies like The Little Shop of Horrors, 1960, where he played a sadistic dental patient, a brief, quirky role that decades later would become a cult favorite. These years were difficult. Nicholson struggled financially, often living modestly, taking whatever roles he could find. Hollywood did not yet know what to do with him. He wasn't the traditional leading man, he had an edge, an unpredictability that didn't fit the polished mold of the time. Writing hand / writing behind the camera. But Jack Nicholson was resourceful. When acting jobs slowed, he turned to writing. He collaborated with directors like Roger Corman, one of the kings of low-budget cinema, penning scripts for films like The Trip, 1967, which starred Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. Nicholson's work as a screenwriter not only kept him afloat but also sharpened his understanding of storytelling. He began to see cinema from multiple perspectives, not just as an actor but as a creator. Glowing Star: The Turning Point, almost quitting. By the late 1960s, Nicholson was frustrated. After nearly a decade of struggling in B-movies and television guest spots, he seriously considered quitting acting altogether. He thought about devoting himself fully to writing and directing instead. But fate had other plans. In 1969, an opportunity arrived that would change his life forever. When actor Rip Torn dropped out of a role in a counterculture film directed by Dennis Hopper, Nicholson was offered the part. The film was Easy Rider. This was no ordinary film. This was a movie that would define a generation, and Jack Nicholson was about to ride into history. In 1969, Jack Nicholson finally caught his break, and not just a break, but a role that would catapult him from obscurity into the heart of American cinema. The film was Easy Rider, directed by Dennis Hopper and starring Hopper alongside Peter Fonda. It was a low-budget, countercultural road movie about bikers traveling across America in search of freedom, a story that captured the spirit of the late 1960s, with all its rebellion, disillusionment, and dreams. Nicholson was cast as George Hanson, a small-town lawyer who joins the bikers on part of their journey. George was funny, vulnerable, and tragic, a man caught between the old America and the new counterculture. Nicholson's performance stole the film. His charm, his humor, and the underlying sadness he brought to George lit up the screen. Audiences and critics were stunned. Here was a fresh face, but more than that, here was an actor who felt real. He wasn't polished. He wasn't fake. He was raw, alive, and unpredictable. For his performance, Nicholson earned his first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Suddenly, after more than a decade of struggling in obscurity, Jack Nicholson was on the map. Performing arts: the 1970s, an actor in his prime. The 1970s were the era of New Hollywood, a time when filmmakers were breaking rules, telling darker, more complex stories, and focusing on flawed, anti-heroic characters. And no one embodied this movement better than Jack Nicholson. He followed Easy Rider with a string of unforgettable roles. 5 Easy Pieces. 1970. Jack played Bobby Dupia, a disillusioned oil rig worker with a hidden past as a piano prodigy. The film became a landmark of American cinema, and Jack earned his second Oscar nomination. The diner scene, where Bobby explodes in frustration trying to order toast, became one of the most iconic moments in film history. The Last Detail. 1973. Nicholson portrayed a Navy petty officer escorting a young sailor to prison. His performance, filled with vulgar humor and aching humanity, earned him another Oscar nomination and cemented him as a voice of the working class. Chinatown. 1974. Directed by Roman Polanski, this neo-noir masterpiece starred Nicholson as private detective J.J. Gitz, unraveling a web of corruption, power, and tragedy in Los Angeles. The film is considered one of the greatest ever made, and Jack's performance remains one of his finest. Trophy: First Academy Award, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975. And then came the role that defined him. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nicholson played Randall P. McMurphy, a rebellious man sent to a mental institution who clashes with the authoritarian Nurse Ratched. The film was a triumph, sweeping the 5 major Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. Jack Nicholson won his first Oscar for Best Actor, delivering a performance that was explosive, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. McMurphy was everything Jack represented: rebellion, humor, humanity, and tragedy. This role didn't just make him a star. It made him a legend. By the late 1970s, Jack Nicholson had become the face of the American anti-hero. He wasn't the traditional Hollywood leading man. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't polished, and that's what made him powerful. He reflected the chaos, disillusionment, and contradictions of the era. When audiences looked at Nicholson, they saw themselves, flawed, searching, rebellious. He became a symbol of truth in cinema, someone who could make you laugh one moment and devastate you the next. By the 1980s, Jack Nicholson was no longer just an actor. He was a force of nature, a presence that electrified every screen he appeared on. His wild grin, his piercing eyes, his unpredictable energy, they became his trademarks. And with them, he delivered some of the most iconic performances cinema has ever seen. Directed by Stanley Kubrick, The Shining gave Nicholson one of his most famous roles: Jack Torrance, a struggling writer and father who descends into madness while isolated in the haunted Overlook Hotel. Nicholson's performance was terrifying, manic, and unforgettable. His improvisation of the line, "Here's Johnny," as he smashed through a door with an axe, became one of the most quoted moments in movie history. Though critics were divided at the time, the film has since become a classic, and Nicholson's portrayal of Jack Torrance remains one of the greatest depictions of madness ever captured on film. Nicholson proved he wasn't confined to horror or rebellion. In terms of endearment, he played Garrett Breedlove, a retired astronaut who begins a relationship with Shirley MacLaine's character. His performance was both hilarious and tender, showing a softer, more human side of Nicholson. It earned him his second Academy Award, this time for Best Supporting Actor. Working with director John Huston, Nicholson played Charlie Partana, a hitman torn between duty and love. The film was stylish, sharp, and filled with dark humor. Nicholson's performance demonstrated his ability to blend menace with charm. When Tim Burton cast Nicholson as the Joker in his Gothic reimagining of Batman, many wondered how this countercultural star would fit into a comic book world. The answer? Brilliantly. Nicholson's Joker was colorful, chaotic, and terrifying, a perfect blend of comedy and horror. He made the role his own, setting a standard for every future portrayal of the character. The film was a global hit, and Nicholson reportedly earned over $50 million for his performance, making it one of the most lucrative roles of his career. By the early 1990s, Nicholson had become the elder statesman of Hollywood, the actor everyone turned to for gravitas and fire. In Rob Reiner's A Few Good Men, he played Colonel Nathan Jessup, a hardened Marine officer whose arrogance unravels under questioning. His explosive courtroom monologue, culminating in the immortal line, "You can't handle the truth," became one of the defining moments in film history. Nicholson's presence in the film elevated it from good to great, earning him another Oscar nomination. In the late 1990s, Nicholson once again surprised audiences. In As Good as It Gets, directed by James L. Brooks, he played Melvin Udall, a misanthropic novelist suffering from obsessive-compulsive disorder. It was a role filled with both cruelty and vulnerability. Nicholson's ability to make audiences despise Melvin one moment and root for him the next showed his unmatched range. For this performance, Nicholson won his third Academy Award, tying him with acting legends like Daniel Day-Lewis and Meryl Streep. He became one of only a handful of actors to win 3 Oscars. Glowing star, the actor of generations. From The Shining to Batman, from A Few Good Men to As Good as It Gets, Jack Nicholson dominated the 1980s and 1990s. He wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural icon, shaping the landscape of film and inspiring generations of performers. He could terrify you. He could make you laugh. He could break your heart. And he could do it all in the same performance. Nicholson was now not only a star, he was a legend. Behind the unforgettable grin and the thunderous performances, Jack Nicholson's life has always carried a sense of mystery. He was, and remains, one of the most private stars in Hollywood, yet pieces of his personal story reveal a man shaped by loss, secrecy, and complicated love. New Moon Symbol Family Secrets Revisited. The revelation in 1974 that Jack's sister was actually his mother and that his mother was his grandmother never left him. Even though he publicly claimed it didn't traumatize him, it was a wound that shaped his worldview. It gave him an air of detachment, a sense of mistrust, but also a resilience, the ability to face painful truths without letting them destroy him. Perhaps this is why Nicholson so often played characters wrestling with identity, betrayal, and inner demons. Red Heart # love, relationships, and a reputation as a ladies' man. Jack Nicholson became just as famous for his off-screen persona as his on-screen roles. Known for his charm and magnetic personality, he was linked to many high-profile relationships throughout his life. He had a long and passionate relationship with actress Angelica Huston, daughter of director John Huston. Their love affair, filled with intensity and turbulence, lasted nearly 17 years, though it ended after Nicholson fathered a child with another woman. Nicholson was also romantically involved with several other women, often making headlines for his charisma and reputation as one of Hollywood's great ladies' men. Though he never married, Nicholson fathered 5 children with 4 different women. Despite the complexities of his relationships, he has always spoken about his love for his children and the importance of family in his life. Pill struggles with fame and indulgence. As one of the most celebrated actors of his time, Nicholson also lived a life of excess. The 1970s and 1980s were decades of indulgence in Hollywood: parties, drugs, and late nights. Jack was at the center of it. He developed a reputation for being wild, unpredictable, and larger than life. While some saw this as part of his charm, it also took its toll. Fame came with temptations, and Nicholson was no stranger to them. Yet, unlike some of his peers who were consumed by Hollywood excess, Jack managed to navigate the chaos and maintain his career at the highest level. His resilience once again set him apart. Health concerns and retreat from the spotlight. In the later years of his life, rumors began to circulate about Nicholson's health. Reports suggested that he was experiencing memory loss, possibly early signs of dementia, though Nicholson himself never publicly confirmed this. What is certain is that by the 2010s, Jack Nicholson began stepping away from public life. His final film role was in How Do You Know in 2010, after which he gradually disappeared from the big screen. For fans, it was heartbreaking to see one of cinema's brightest lights fade into quiet retirement. But for Jack, after decades of intensity, perhaps it was a well-earned rest. Waterwave, the man behind the mask. What makes Jack Nicholson's struggles so compelling is how human they are. Family secrets. Complicated love. The temptations of fame. The challenges of aging. And yet, through it all, Jack remained true to himself. He embraced his flaws, his contradictions, his imperfections, and he channeled them into performances that felt alive, real, and unforgettable. In many ways, Nicholson's personal battles only deepened his artistry. The chaos of his life became the fuel for his characters, making them more authentic, more flawed, more human. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Jack Nicholson had already secured his place as one of the greatest actors in history. He had 3 Academy Awards, countless nominations, and an unrivaled legacy. But even legends eventually reach a point where the roar of the crowd gives way to quiet reflection. Clapperboard continuing greatness in the 2000s. Even as he entered his 60s, Nicholson continued to deliver powerful performances. In About Schmidt, 2002, he gave one of his most vulnerable portrayals as Warren Schmidt, a recently retired man grappling with loneliness and the search for meaning. The performance earned him another Academy Award nomination and showed audiences a softer, more fragile side of Nicholson. In Something's Gotta Give, 2003, he starred opposite Diane Keaton in a romantic comedy that became a box office hit. Nicholson's charm and humor shone through, proving that even in his later years, he could still be a leading man. In The Departed, 2006, directed by Martin Scorsese, Nicholson played crime boss Frank Costello, a role filled with menace, unpredictability, and wild energy. It was Nicholson at his most unhinged, reminding the world that he could still dominate the screen with terrifying brilliance. Movie camera. The final role, How Do You Know, 2010. Jack Nicholson's final film role came in How Do You Know, 2010, a romantic comedy directed by James L. Brooks. The film wasn't a success, and though Nicholson gave a solid performance, it lacked the impact of his earlier work. After that, Nicholson quietly stepped away from acting. Unlike many stars who announce their retirement with fanfare, Jack simply stopped appearing in films. His absence left fans speculating, was it health, was it choice, or was it simply time? New moon symbol. Retreat from the spotlight. In the years that followed, Nicholson largely withdrew from public life. Reports circulated about his health, with rumors of memory loss and cognitive decline. While these were never fully confirmed, what became clear was that Nicholson was no longer interested in the demands of Hollywood. He was occasionally spotted courtside at Los Angeles Lakers games, his lifelong passion, but gone were the days of red carpets and movie premieres. For a man who had given over 50 years to cinema, perhaps the quiet suited him. After all, he had nothing left to prove. By the time he stepped away, Jack Nicholson had amassed a body of work that few could rival. 3 Academy Awards, for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Terms of Endearment, and As Good as It Gets. 12 Oscar nominations, the most of any male actor in history at the time. A filmography that spanned every genre: horror, drama, comedy, romance, and action. A reputation as one of the greatest actors to ever live. His retreat wasn't a disappearance. It was a closing act, a quiet fade-out after a career filled with thunder. In retirement, Nicholson chose to focus on family, friendships, and his love of basketball. He lived a quieter life, away from the chaos of fame, but always remained in the hearts of fans who grew up with his unforgettable characters. And though he no longer stood in front of the camera, his presence was everywhere, in the countless films he left behind, in the performances that became part of cinema's DNA, and in the memories of audiences who still quote his lines, still mimic his grin, still feel his energy decades later. Few actors in history have ever cast a shadow as long as Jack Nicholson. He was not just a performer, he was a phenomenon. Over the course of 5 decades, Nicholson redefined what it meant to be a movie star. He wasn't polished like the leading men of Hollywood's golden age. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't safe, and that was exactly his power. He brought truth, chaos, and humanity to every role, and in doing so, he transformed cinema itself. Nicholson became the face of New Hollywood in the 1970s. He gave audiences characters who were flawed, complex, and deeply human. From Bobby Dupia in 5 Easy Pieces to J.J. Gitz in Chinatown, he showed that heroes didn't have to be perfect. They could be broken. They could be real. He embodied rebellion. He embodied honesty. And he gave a voice to a generation that was disillusioned and searching for truth. A legacy of iconic roles. Jack Nicholson's characters have become part of our culture. Randall McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the rebel who fought authority. Jack Torrance in The Shining, the chilling descent into madness. The Joker in Batman, chaos painted in a smile. Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men, the man who delivered the line, "You can't handle the truth." Melvin Udall in As Good as It Gets, a cruel man who learns love. Each role was unforgettable. Each role was alive. Trophy awards and recognition. Nicholson's achievements speak for themselves. 3 Academy Awards, Best Actor twice, Best Supporting Actor once. 12 Oscar nominations, a record among male actors for decades. BAFTA Awards, Golden Globes, and countless honors from peers and critics alike. But awards only tell part of the story. The real measure of his success is the way his work continues to resonate. Decades after his greatest performances, people still watch, still quote, still marvel. Jack Nicholson's influence extends beyond film. His smile, his voice, his sunglasses at Lakers games, they all became cultural icons. He represented the spirit of Hollywood itself, rebellious, larger than life, and unforgettable. Actors who came after him, from Al Pacino to Leonardo DiCaprio to Joaquin Phoenix, all trace part of their inspiration back to Jack. He wasn't just an actor, he was a standard-bearer for authenticity. For all the legends and myths, Nicholson remained a man of contradictions. He was both intensely private and wildly public. Both charismatic and distant. Both a rebel and a professional. And that complexity, that refusal to be one thing, to be simple, was exactly what made him great. Today, Jack Nicholson lives quietly, away from the lights of Hollywood. But his absence only makes his presence stronger. His films remain. His characters remain. His truth remains. Jack Nicholson's legacy is not just in the lines he delivered or the awards he won, but in the way he made us feel. He unsettled us. He inspired us. He made us laugh, cry, and think. He reminded us that cinema is not about perfection, it is about truth. So we honor him now, not just as a star, not just as a legend, but as one of the last great titans of the silver screen. Jack Nicholson is more than an actor. He is a cultural monument. A living legend. A man whose work will never fade, because it has already become part of who we are. Person with praying hands, if this tribute touched you, please like this video, subscribe to Gone Legends, and share it with others who honor the memory of Hollywood's brightest stars.